It's me, Ask Mike, with something new. Jim, Jordan, Sabrina Schmitz, and I decided that we would bring you a new podcast, and we're excited about it. We're super excited about it, Jim and Sabrina. So, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce my two friends, my two buddies. One is older, one is prettier.
There's one.
Are we counting those?
Yes,
we sure are. Yes.
Oh, okay.
We had a pre-podcast bet about how many old jokes Mike would throw in there.
It's a podcast. It's a podcast. Right. So, you want to start, Jim, and tell us about you?
I really go back. This will sound crazy, but my family's connection to Walsworth goes back probably to 1946. And back in those days, the Walsworth brothers used to barnstorm all around the Midwest, and they started doing programs for plays and things. And then after the war, they did books of the veterans in little towns. And my mom is from a small town in Michigan called Athens, Michigan. And one time I was there, it probably was 20 years ago, I was sitting in my mom's best friend's living room, and they pulled out the book of all the vets from Athens, Michigan. I flipped it over, and guess who published it? Walsworth Publishing.
Of course.
So I'm really excited about that. And it's just great. The great family history of Walsworth has been going on for over 80 years now. So anyway, well, let's go a few years in the future. I think like 35 years. I experienced early in my teaching career, I got moved without my permission from one school to another. I got moved from Mira Loma High School to Del Campo High School, and I decided I didn't want that to happen again. And back in those days, they had something called program need, where a principal could keep you if you were doing some dirty job that no other teacher wanted to do.
Yearbook.
And so when yearbook came up, I volunteered because actually, I don't even think you two guys know about this, but there was a time I wanted to be an architect. I took mechanical drawing.
I didn't know that.
He was born in Athens. You saw those buildings they have there. Oh, Michigan.
Michigan,
yeah, not that in Athens. No,
that's two.
There's two, Sabrina.
You're better at building yearbooks and not buildings. That's good. You went with the right path.
So I liked architecture, and then and from that type, I like doing cool handwritten type. I always loved photography. And so then when this job came up, I stepped in. And also another really important thing is Del Campo had a great history of great kids taking yearbook. And so it was built in that it was a thing that good students wanted to do. So I started in the fall of 1982. Mike was 1982. Mike was Mike had just graduated from high school, I think.
Yeah.
And Sabrina was probably.
I was a year old.
Yeah, there you go. And so we launched into doing my first yearbook. And the big thing that really changed me and kind of made me want to do a great yearbook was I started going to yearbook workshops in the summer, did my first yearbook workshop in the summer of 82. And then in the summer of 83, the first one was at Stanford. The second one was at UC Berkeley. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. They had a library of books, a big old cardboard box of books you could pull out and look at. And I pulled one out, and it happened to be the yearbook from Old Main High School in North Little Rock, Arkansas, advised by Bruce Watterson. And so I opened it up, and it literally was like a light hit me. It was like, this is what a yearbook can be. It's not just a scrapbook. It's not just a collage. It was some place where you could tell stories that were important to the school year. So subsequently, the next year, I actually met Bruce Watterson at the same workshop I was going to. Met Bruce Watterson, H.L. Hall, Tom Rolnicki, and they really were my mentors early on that got me excited about yearbooks. And
these
then
are like yearbook legends. Like, these are people that are like the yearbook whisperer, is your mentor. Like, these are the legends in the industry. That's huge.
Yeah, and still we get to bring them in. Mike brings them in to Elite Weekends every year, Bruce, and we're all
I've had H.L. Hall before. I've had it. He's done them before.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just fantastic. And then the other big thing that happened in this time was in the spring, well, actually at that workshop in the summer of '85, Bruce Watterson was walking around Stanford University where that first workshop was, and he saw
to go shopping.
Well, yeah, no, he actually was on campus. He saw a flyer about this new program, this new computer that they were introducing, and he went to a workshop on the Stanford campus about Apple Macintosh computers. And that very next year, it was H.L. and Bruce, and I'm sure there were some other ones in the country, but they really were the leaders in doing a yearbook on a Macintosh computer. They did it in that 85, 86 year. And then I went to a seminar that next spring, and I started 86, 87. And so that's just to say that we, and Mike was a part of this too, we were pioneers, we were tech pioneers in creating books with technology. In the old days, you had to write on these triplicate forms, and you'd send the pictures in to Walsworth, and 100 people in the cottages around Marceline, Missouri, they would be marking these and they'd be putting them in. But the personal computer came in, and that really changed everything. Mm-hmm. And from there, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, no, I have a question for you. Books before the early 80s really weren't theme-related books, were they? Or am I wrong about that? I mean, they weren't the themes.
Oh, no, you're wrong. Oh, no, there weren't many of them, but I also had an opportunity to go to a workshop or to teach at a workshop in Pocatello, Idaho. And they had some of the most amazing themes going back to World War II.
Really?
How do you remember this stuff? How do you remember you were in Pocatello, Idaho? I can't remember where I was this morning. And you were like,
no, I mean, I would love to.
We were in Pocatello, Idaho. How you remember that?
No, because I was so impressed. The advisor took me into the place where he had his old yearbooks, and they had this amazing World War II theme where they wrote their theme copy like it was a letter to a soldier on the field during 1944. It was crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
And then I also remember in 1958, they had a rocket ship theme that paralleled when Sputnik came out. And yes, Mike, I was alive for all these events that happened.
But were you on Sputnik?
Yeah, I was 3 when Sputnik happened. But no, there really were themes then. But back to my story, what's kept me loving yearbook is there's been so many innovations that have happened year after year after year that really kept it intellectually stimulating to me. But I do want to say this one last thing about my 35 years as an advisor. When I first started, I wanted to create the prettiest award-winning yearbook possible. And I still care about that. And I know we have so many advisors that care about that. But you know what still keeps me loving yearbooks is the effect that I see it has on students every day. Everybody that's in that yearbook room that's really engaged in the creation process is getting a skill set that is unparalleled, I think, anywhere else in the school. So, I feel so good about being part of an activity that does. And I know Mike and Sabrina, you both feel the same way. Sabrina, as a sales representative, sees this every day. Mm-hmm. Great kids getting great skills that are going to make them better people down the road.
Yeah. How appropriate that you talked about your love for yearbook and it's Valentine's Day. Yeah, I don't think you meant that. Last year, right around November, December, I went into a middle school I taught at, and I posted some pictures of our old book from the early 90s. And so many of my kids have come forward. I think I have like 60 people on there that are just remembering things that I taught them. And I'm like, really? I had no idea that I would have that impact. And you're absolutely right. Technology does bring all that forward.
And I think you hit the nail on the head too, Jim, we were all teachers. We were all yearbook advisors, all three of us. And there was times that as a teacher, I was like, I can't read this chapter 5 of To Kill a Mockingbird one more time today. Like, I just can't do it, And I loved it.
Shame on you.
But I can't. I mean, after 6 times in one day, I'm like, I get it. Scout, Boo Radley, got it. But yearbook is the one thing that never got old and stale. It was always like all that change that you saw from the beginning of like desktop publishing to now, like that just keeps it interesting. It never gets boring. And every year is like a clean slate to start something new. And that makes it super fun. That makes you want to keep doing it. Yeah.
So tell us your whole story, Sabrina.
So I was a big reader and writer when I was a kid. I used to write stories all the time just for fun, like creative writing stuff. I wrote a story when I was in 4th grade that won this Young Authors Award, and it was called The Princess and the Purple Golden Apple Tree, and I still have it at my parents' house. And I can't draw to save my life, but I illustrated this whole thing, and it won this little award, and I knew I wanted to go into writing or something like that. I just was like all about that all through school. And when I was in high school, I was a drama kid, like musicals and plays and thespians and all that kind of stuff. And my senior year, they put me in yearbook. I was supposed to take another class that got canceled. They put me in yearbook, and I was in there for like a week. And I went running to my guidance counselor, like, get me out. Get me out. I don't want anything to do with this. This is like not my jam at all. They give me another chorus class, give me another drama class. Like, I don't want any of this. Plus it was a yearbook where like a lot of times it was the people who were on yearbook staff used pictures of their friends, and that was like the bulk of what was in the book. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. So I got switched out. And then when I went to college to do like English, writing, all that kind of stuff. And then I started working. A friend of mine actually was working in politics, like working on a couple local state campaigns. So I got into that and I loved it. And after about a semester, I took a semester off to work on a campaign and then realized that, you know what, I'd rather be covering these things rather than being a part of these things. And so that's kind of how I got into journalism. A friend of mine mentioned that to me. I was wondering if I wanted to stick with English. It just wasn't as like interesting as I wanted it to be. And I had this whole like politics area that I really was excited about. And so that's kind of how I ended up changing my major and getting into journalism. And then it was like, when you found your spot, you're like, this is it. Like, this is what I am excited about, because it was so many different things. Like it was design, and it was writing, and it was people's stories and interviewing and design and photography and all those fields. Like I just got like super pumped about, and I was like, this is what I want to do. But I still wanted to go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was going to ask you, How did you know I was going to talk?
I saw you go.
Because Mike's always going to talk. Well,
you got that right.
Jim built an award-winning program at Del Campo from the ground up, and you kind of did something a little bit differently, didn't you? You followed somebody that had already started building.
Mm-hmm.
I think your story has some unique stuff to it.
It's different.
Yeah.
Well, once I started, I wanted to teach too. So when I graduated college, I started teaching. I wanted to do the school newspaper, and that position was filled. And so the lady that was currently doing the yearbook at J.W. Mitchell High School, her name was Angie. She was in there, and she's like, well, come, I'll be your mentor. She was an experienced teacher. She had done yearbook in high school. She had been doing the yearbook there for years, and she's like, I'll be your mentor. You can come help me. So I helped her. I went to camp. I helped her for 2 or 3 months. And then I went to her and I was like, no, thank you. I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this. I was like, it's a lot. I don't know. That's not really what I was interested in. And I did think it was more, I still really thought it was more scrapbooking-y, and that program wasn't, but that was the vibe I got from it. And so I really wanted newspaper storytelling, interviewing, that kind of hardcore reporting. And so she ended up leaving in December to take a job at our district office, and the principal was like, congratulations, you're doing it whether you want to or not. Yep, which I'm sure many of you out there have probably been in this exact same position where you don't want it but you're getting it. So I jumped in halfway through the year, which made the most sense because I had been helping a little. So I knew the kids and I kind of knew where things were going. And she, definitely helped me finish out the school year, but they already had a very well-established program, like Mike was saying. It was already starting to win some awards. She had systems in place for everything, it was running kind of like a well-oiled machine. So when I had to jump in, it was really just jump in and keep it moving forward. And I do remember a moment when Angie pulled me aside and she's like, it doesn't have to be like this. To create a yearbook, it doesn't have to be this intense. It doesn't have to be award winning. And she's right. It doesn't have to be that way. But I was way too competitive to let that go. I was like, nah, if I'm gonna do this, we're gonna do it. So we're gonna do it to the nth degree. And we did. I fell in love with it. And in fact, that spring, I was at a spring workshop where Mike was. Yep. I think it was that spring or the spring after. It was either at that spring or the spring after. Mike was teaching at a one-day spring workshop that they had in Tampa. And he was up there talking about spreads. He had his little inspiration PowerPoint. And I actually remember it was a magazine spread about the TV show Lost. If any of you watched that, I was a diehard fan. But I remember I can picture the spread on the projector and Mike talking about it. And my mind was going a mile a minute. I was like, I have so many ideas. I don't even know what to do with it. And that was that moment, Jim, you were saying, it was that challenge, that intellectually stimulating, this could be so fun. I don't even know where to begin, but I've got ideas. Tons of ideas and I'm hooked, Yeah. And then from then on out, it's in my blood. I was just all about yearbook all the time. And it was the best experience.
And you make great PowerPoints now.
I learned from the pro, I learned from the best.
And then Jim's taking them over from you.
So how many books did you advise?
I did 8 before. I was actually teaching at a workshop in Chicago for Mary Slater, one of the best reps in the biz. She's a legend. And I was teaching at a workshop for her. And our current executive vice president of sales was actually an area manager at the time. And he came up to me and asked if I'd ever thought about being a rep. And I was like, no, I have not, but that sounds interesting. And I wasn't ready to leave the classroom. I loved my kids. We had a great program. We were winning awards and stuff. We were having fun. But that year when he approached me, it just happened to fall in the right year. It was a group of kids I was really close to was graduating, and it was just the right moment. And so I kind of took the leap and thought, what can be bad about doing all yearbooks all the time? That was the favorite part of my school day to begin with. So why not do this all the time, and I would never look back. I've loved every second of it. Still in the classroom, still working with staffs, making good books. Like, it's been a blast and I love it.
And pay attention, folks, because in our future podcasts, we're going to find out what could be bad about Sabrina and doing yearbooks all the time.
Truth gets to be a lot, but
It's
all good stuff.
It's not all Guns and Roses, is
No,
it?
it's not unicorns and rainbows all the time. Trust me.
We hear what a great driver she is. She loves to be on the road.
I am part of the Walsworth Safe Driving Club, according to Mr. Mike Taylor, which means that I've had my fair share of running into things. It's hard. We drive a lot, like the numbers are stacked against us. Just by proportionality, at some point I'm going to hit something.
So you used to take care of one yearbook, and now you take care of a lot more than that.
77 right now. Yeah.
70.
That's a
lot.
That was a big jump. But it's awesome. Like, when you work with awesome people and you've got great kids out there, like y'all were saying, like the stuff that students continue to produce year after year never ceases to amaze me. Like, there's always that moment of like, wow, I would have never thought of that. Like, you're 16 years old, 17 years old, 15 years old. I'm like, how did you come up with this geniusness? Like, I would have never thought that. And I think that's kind of the fun part. Like, there's always surprises. There's always new things that take you by surprise. And I think that's the fun part. For sure.
And there's always a pirate ship or two in our future.
Of course. And now Mr. Pirate Mike Taylor is now living in the Sunshine State and is nearer to pirates than ever. So, but Mike, you started your career here in Florida. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this fabulous world of yearbooks?
I did ask for the job, just like Jim did, but going back further, I was in 11th grade or 10th grade, and I signed up for honors chemistry. Okay, Mike, if Mike knows, if you all know any
people in architect and chemistry,
no.
I had no idea.
I only signed up with it because I wanted to be part of the really smart kids club. Straight F's in chemistry. And at that time, you honors chemistry in the first semester. I really worked hard at it. And Mr. Teichgraber, I'm never going to forget his name. Mr. Teichgraber kept saying, I don't know if they still have to write lab reports, but you had to write lab reports all the time on every single thing we did. And he came up to me, he goes, "You're my best writer in the class, but you sure can't do the math." And I said, "Amen, brother." I did not say that to Mr. Teichgraber. And you didn't have to have, you didn't have to pass honors chemistry to graduate, or I would still be there. And he says, "I went to the guidance department and moved you into the newspaper." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I was a little bit embarrassed because, newspaper is like an elective class, right? Well, it got in my blood just like it got in yours. I did yearbook in college, and it was paste up book, and I'm embarrassed by it. And I wrote that crappy copy that our football team won football against other football teams. I can pull it out and show it to you.
Didn't you have a story that said like something about in math they do mathy things or something like that?
Yeah. No, that was my son's yearbook.
That's right.
It was my son's yearbook. But so then I started teaching at Crystal River Middle School, where I am back in town right now. And I taught 1 year of fifth grade. And I was like, what am I teaching fifth grade for? I just make these kids cry.
I just can't picture you in an elementary classroom at all. There's parts of me that I can.
Yeah, because a fifth grader with fifth graders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You're relating.
And went to the yearbook comes out, and I went to the principal and I said, "Really, I could do a better job than this." Well, I was saying that about the union president.
Who was doing the book?
Who did the book? She's dead now, so I can say these things. But I probably shouldn't have done that because he yanked that book out from under her and gave me all the publications of the school. So,
Bingo.
yeah, I was the newspaper advisor and I was the yearbook advisor. And, we won Quill and Scroll, which is international first place, I think. I don't remember, for the newspaper. And we started doing well. And I went to a camp run by a different yearbook company. And there was this guru at this camp. He was like the guy. And he ignored my kids. And I was like, and he ignored my book, my kids, my whole program. And I left there and I was like,
Dun,
oh,
dun,
no, we're
dun.
not. Yeah, we're not doing that. So switched yearbook companies. And then I went to the high school and did 8 books at the high school before I became the, what was I then? I was basically just the education manager for Taylor Publishing, which no longer exists. And a couple years in, I got to work with Linda Ballou. Jim, Linda, so do you, Sabrina, up in Montana. And she said she wanted, Jake Polanski, my buddy Jake. He's the one, he says, call Linda Ballou. And I called her and I signed her as a salesperson, but I wasn't a salesperson, which I got nothing for. And along with Linda Ballou came a lot of yearbooks over to Taylor. And all of a sudden I got this new job of going all over the country, doing yearbooky things, which is kind of cool.
And I do want to say, one thing that is a hallmark of who you are, Mike Taylor, that probably came out of that first workshop is nobody gets forgotten who knows Mike Taylor. You are.
I'll never do that to somebody. I'll never.
You are the master of making kids feel important and valuing who advisors are. And it's your gift, and we really appreciate.
Thank you.
That you do that so very well.
Yeah,
well, and the other thing was I went to a ESOL. Is it ESIL? I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
ESOL now. I went to a training where it was supposed to start at 8:30, and I'm not going to tell you which county centers. It's supposed to start at 8:30. It didn't start till 10. Why? The people running it didn't come in, and then they came in with bagels and cream cheese, and everybody started talking. And I said, I'm never going to ever start a workshop that late. My big thing is starting a workshop on time. I don't care if I give you bad information. We're starting on time.
And then letting them go on time too.
Exactly.
Yes.
No teacher wants to sit there till 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock, taking those ridiculous tests that no one is ever going to look at. So my thing is hands-on. I did start Advisor Academy. It was called, what was it called? New Advisors Workshop at Taylor Publishing. Ended up being so big. And I brought it over to Walsworth when I came, but we have Advisor Academy now, and that's not fair. Walsworth did have Advisor Academy, started by Dave Massey. Yes. But I just took it over after I came. Yeah. So, and then in the intensity workshops I had at Taylor, I brought, and now they are the Elite Weekend workshops.
Mike, how'd you get into, how'd you start moving your book in the, when you were advising, how'd you start moving your book in the journalistic direction? Because wasn't it, when you first started, right? You've talked about that first book before when it was just there were no words, right?
Yeah,
0 words.
I have a book with no page numbers.
No page numbers. It's literally just a book of pictures, right? So, for all of you new advisors out there, if you've got any words in your book, you're already tracking ahead of the game. You know, but you ended up moving into this teaching yearbook is not just your book. It's not just throwing pictures on a page with no words. It's journalism. How'd you swing in that direction?
I went to, oh my gosh, Jim knows this guy. I fell in love with this advisor, man crush, teacher crush. I went to FSPA Region 4 workshop with my kids, and it was down in Tampa somewhere, St. Pete. It was at Lato High School. That's why I asked you about that the other day.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And I met this guy named Rick McNeil. Yes. I worshiped Rick McNeil. I still do to this day. And he is in that same category, or would have been had he not got out of journalism and teaching totally. But he was in that same category that Jim was talking about of H.L. Hall and Bruce Water. He was the wonder kid. Well,
man.
He was amazing. And I asked him if I could come in and shadow him for a day. And if you know me, I'm not all that forward. I'm a shy kind of guy.
Depends on the situation. Like, completely. Right. Everyone right now listening just went.
Yeah. So I went down there and met Carl Zimmerman, and I met Rick McNeil. Carl Zimmerman did broadcast. I fell in love with their program. They had Mac classics all over the place. And I was like, I'm going to be these guys, but up in Citrus County, which I had one Mac classic. And so Rick McNeil started me on my path in FSPA. And then I met a lady named Suze Maybe from Oviedo High School at the state FSPA. So basically, the state journalism conference is just what lit my fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I fell in love with it. And I didn't go to JEA or NSPA for years, probably till like the 96, 97 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in it. Like I don't have as much invested as Jim or you for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just a great example, Mike, of really one of the topics we're going to be talking about here on this podcast. That podcast is
with those yearbook people.
Those yearbook people. If you want to take your book to the next level, if you want to make it more journalistic, we're going to be talking about that. And coming up soon, I think we're going to be talking about little things that drive us crazy when we go and visit schools. And then we're also going to be talking about really soon about how to get your kids involved in a journalism convention, because the big journalism convention this spring, the NSPA JEA National High School Journalism Convention, is in Kansas City, which is the home of the home offices of Walsworth Yearbooks. We're going to be taking trips up to see
Kelce, the plant. Taylor Swift, Patrick
all of that stuff. So we're going to have a ton of topics for you, and we're looking forward to where we're going to go with this. So we hope you'll tune in again for our next episode. We're hoping for 1 or 2 episodes a month, and we're going to talk about all kinds of topics. In fact, we're just getting started here, and we're so glad you're here.
Welcome to our first podcast of 2024. Thank you guys for listening to us. And remember, you can get your podcast
Gonna be a lot of
wherever
fun.
Podcasts are. I always wanted to say
That's
that.
Right.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Ask Mike, one of those guys from That Yearbook Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you get excited about.